Most business students know networking is important, but often do it wrong. Hi, my name is Rahil Shah. I'm a sophomore at the University of Michigan Ross. And through networking, I've gotten multiple calls, multiple internship opportunities, and referrals. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I approach networking, how I've gotten good at it, and what are the tips that you can use to get better yourself. So there are basically two types of networking that you're going to do as a business student in college, and that's in person and through cold outreach. I'm going to focus on in person in this video because that's where most people struggle, but I might make a video separately on cold outreach if people want that. So usually the way that in-person networking works at a college is that they'll bring in one company or multiple and have the opportunity for students to ask questions and go around and talk to everyone. The first tip I have is to find the right person. It sounds obvious, but a mistake that a lot of students make is that when they come to these events, they talk to the first person they can find, which is usually not the best use of their time. What you want to do instead is find a person that's in the niche or job that you want to go into. One strategy for this is to find the coordinator responsible for hosting the event. Oftentimes they're at the event itself and you can find them, they're a little bit away from the speakers, and just go up and ask them and say, hey, who should I talk to about blank, blank, blank? Other times you might have to email them a few days in advance and say, listen, I'm coming to this event. Who do you think is the best person to talk to for sales and trading, for example, or whatever it is? Once you find the right person to talk to, the next thing is to approach them, which brings me to my second tip, which is have a strong opening line. People will judge and remember you for your opening line, which is why it's a strong differentiator if you're able to come up with a unique and creative one. Most people will say something like, hey, my name is Rahil, I'm a business student. And that can work fine, but what you could do instead is something a little bit more creative. So something that I like to do is just walk up and say, hey, what's up? I heard you're the man to talk to about sales and trading, or I heard you're the man to talk to about investment banking, whatever it is. And from that, they'll likely respond positively, and you can just start introducing yourself and going on with the conversation. The next tip I have is to get as close to a one-on-one as possible. The problem with groups is that it's harder to stand out, it's harder to speak, and it's harder to get remembered. So there are a few ways to try to get a one-on-one. One thing that I do is to stick with the group with another person and somewhat engage with that person in the group, and then wait till you find an opportunity to go talk to the other person. Another way is to wait for the crowd to die out a little bit and then try to find an opportunity there. Now, if you can't find a one-on-one and you are in a group, that doesn't mean it's useless. You just have to be smart about it and make sure you don't dominate the conversation. Once you're actually in the conversation, the next step is to ask good questions. If you're in a one-on-one, then this becomes way easier because then it's just a conversation. For that, just prepare beforehand. Research what they do, what you know about them, how they started, and ask questions like that to pique their interest. Now, if you're in a group, which is most of the time, the strategy is a little bit different. The biggest mistake that people make is that they don't listen enough. I know this sounds basic, but most people don't do it. Most people are too obsessed with trying to remember their own questions that they don't actually listen to what the person is saying. What you should do is actually listen to what they have to say and tailor your questions to their answers. And in this way, you can stand out much better. This also allows you to jump in anytime without sounding forced. Whether you're in a group or one-on-one, my next tip is to talk about yourself. A lot of students feel weird talking about themselves because they don't want it to come out as unnatural. But you have to remember that this is a conversation and they do want to find out more about you as well. So imagine you're talking to a sales and trader. You can be like, hey, funny enough, I actually worked as a roofing salesman 2 summers ago, and I had to deal with a lot of clients similar to what you just mentioned now. And usually if you say something like that, you'll pique their interest and they'll be like, oh, no way, what'd you do? And then you can talk more about yourself before bringing it back to them. If you're in a group, you want to do the same thing, but shorten it and tailor it to the question. So for example, if they're talking about, say, the clients they work with, you can be like, hey, I actually worked as a roofing salesman 2 summers ago. How does outreach change from traditional methods like what I did versus what you do at your workplace? Or something along those lines. Just make sure you don't talk too much about yourself because you don't want to dominate the conversation, and make sure your questions are actually tailored to what they're doing. The next tip I have is don't try to talk to everyone. It is much better to have 1 or 2 strong conversations than 5 weak ones that don't lead anywhere. Remember, the goal is to build a connection. And the only way you can do that is by having one or two great conversations. Okay, the last tip I have for when you're actually in the conversation is how to end it. A lot of people mess this up and they try to keep the conversation going even when it's dulling out a little bit. What you want to do is when the conversation starts to slow down a little bit, you want to end it on a high note. In fact, I would rather leave a little bit too early than a little bit too late. The way you end it is also important. You want to frame it as you're respecting their time. So for example, what you can say is, hey, I love the conversation. I don't want to take up too much of your time so you can go talk to other students. I'd love to stay in touch. Would you mind giving me your email? The last tip I have is following up. The first thing you want to do is right after you end the conversation or leave the building that the event is taking place in, you want to write down a list of every single thing that you can remember about all the conversations you had. And trust me, I've been guilty of not doing this myself, but it is so useful down the line. Okay, once you have your notes of everything that's happened in every conversation, the next day, you're gonna send thank you notes to every conversation you had, no matter how bad or how good it went. All you have to do is thank them for their time and reference one specific thing that you talked about in your conversation. Now, if it goes well, hopefully they respond with something like, hey, it was great talking to you as well. From there, you can go many different directions. What I like to do is send them an email after maybe 3 to 5 days and say, hey, listen, I love talking to you at this event. I'd love to learn more about your company and learn more about your team. Is there anyone else I could talk to within this industry or within this position? And this is how you turn one conversation into multiple opportunities. At the end of the day, remember that networking isn't about being perfect. If you can have a few strong conversations and follow up properly, you'll be ahead of most people. The last thing I'll mention is that networking is a skill, and it does take time to get better at it. Keep trying your best, use some of the tips that I've mentioned in this video, and you will get better.